Hello and welcome to my presentation this week. It's going to be on taxes. Specifically, I'm going to briefly look at property taxes, income taxes, and sales taxes. And we're going to be looking at their efficiency, what kind of distortions they can lead to, and are they philosophically or politically uh, fair, and how they're viewed that way. As we all know, taxes are a necessity. Um, they're compulsory and they're not voluntary. We have to pay taxes. We don't have a choice in the matter because the government needs them to provide essential services that we all need and use. And they're compulsory primarily to avoid free riders the free rider problem, those who would be taking advantage of the services provided but not paying into it. But we'll take a look at that too as we move through it. So I said the first one I'm going to discuss is the property taxes. It is a direct tax. State and local governments rely pretty heavily on them. Like I said, it's direct because you're paying it directly from your property taxes to the government. It is fairly transparent as far as the indices. The burden of the tax is on the homeowner, um, but then that also brings up, um, in terms of its efficiency, I should say, uh, I feel it is very efficient because most places, most people pay them directly through their mortgage, so it's all pretty automated. It is very efficient that way. The distortions, however, though, are also playing to its fairness. Is um, If people don't want to pay the tax, they just won't buy a house. They'll rent. That's probably the biggest or most obvious distortion. And again, like I said, it plays into um, a little bit with the philosophical or the political side of it is that fairness. How is it fair for me as a homeowner, to pay for taxes that on property that I believe I already own? So why am I paying taxes on something I already own? Even after your home is paid off, you're still going to pay those property taxes. On the other hand, too, you have those on that spectrum who are going to try and argue, if my property tax is going for services like education, well, I don't have any kids, so why am I paying for the education of other children? Because again, you have those that we're going to want to pay because the education of our children are our future, and that's important, and others that are, lack of a better term, would say more selfish or more self-minded, and you're going to say, no, I don't want to pay for these other kids to receive an education at my expense. I don't have kids. Why am I paying for other kids? Um, that's really just how they go. I feel the two ends of that spectrum. The next one on the income taxes. Income taxes again are very direct, very transparent. Again, the indices on that is on the wage earner, the worker. Um, so you know exactly, the more you make, the more you pay in taxes. Is it efficient? Again, in my opinion, yes and no. I think it presents quite a burden on the taxpayer directly, with all the forms to fill out and keeping records and going to a tax preparer, and it's a whole thing, and then saving your receipts for forever, 7 to 10 years or longer, depending on who you talk to. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of headache with all the codes and everything else involved. Like I said, is it direct? Yes, the money goes directly there. Is it efficient? If I can get my slide to pop up, there it goes. Um, in my opinion, not so much. It's definitely not that efficient in terms of the burden of work that it places on the person filing their taxes. And the distortion effects, again, kind of like the homes. If I don't want to pay so much in taxes, I just won't work as much. And then again, on the philosophical or the political spectrum, you get back to that same thing. On the one end, you'll get people that only want to pay taxes. They don't want to pay taxes to pay for the those who didn't prepare and work and provide their own income. And on the other side, you have those that say, I don't want to pay taxes. I'm going to work less. In fact, I might work so much less that now I'll be on social assistance, and everybody else working is going to pay for me or subsidize for me to be able to survive and live. because I don't want to have to work that hard and pay a bunch of extra taxes. Then you have your sales taxes. It is indirect. Not quite, obviously not quite as transparent, because you do it at the point of sale when you're purchasing something, and that business takes it and sends the money out to state, local, and federal governments, wherever, depending on where you live, where they're going to distribute that money to pay those taxes. As far as efficiencies, I think it's efficient for the person making the purchase, not so efficient when it comes to the actual production. When you get into the supply and demand curves, it really creates, or it can create an inefficiency due to the deadweight loss that is created. It really comes down to depending on ultimately who ends up paying the difference of that tax, if it's the producer or the buyer, whether they're going to make more or less of the product, or whether the buyer will purchase more or less of the product because the change in the price. And again, if it's philosophically fair, I know that's not the exact question, but that's the way I'm framing it here. As I'm sorry, I skipped over the distortion. You have the reduction of sales of certain items, like I said, because of the supply and demand or the production. And then on the political spectrum, again, sales tax, like anything else politically, it just depends on which end of the spectrum or where you fall in between. More tax, some people like more taxes. Some people do not like more taxes. It's really all how it ends up coming down to. And again, I apologize for rambling through this one and having it late. But thank you for watching if you did watch. I appreciate it.